Welcome to Live. I'm Josh Hayes. I'm here with Steve Beaulieu and Papa Chuck. This is the prop episode, if you haven't noticed. But Steve doesn't have a prop. Welcome to everybody to the show. And look at he's even got a magnifying glass. This is how this show's gonna go.
I am Don Calvin. That is who I am.
You're Gandalf the T-shirted.
Welcome everybody in the live stream. Welcome if you're in the live chat. Hello. Let's see who had the first comment. I bet you it was UD151 Sci-Fi Booktube. Gets the keystroke medium gulp clap of approval or snaps if you're Steve. Welcome. Let's see, Rick and somebody said woo intro music, and I need to see who that is. I got to look at my other computer because
that means they haven't watched it in a while.
Well, it just means they haven't given StreamYard. It's Alexander Beernut. I think I pronounced that incorrectly, but I'm sorry.
Did you call him Beernut?
It says Beernut. Biernat. Beernut.
Bierne.
Let me know if I pronounced it incorrectly.
Correctly.
William Tyler Davis is in the chat. Hello.
Hello.
Is that a Lord of the Rings pipe?
Whose?
I think that's yours, Steve.
I'm sure it's yours.
Or yours. I mean, Chuck's got a Sherlock pipe. It's kind of obvious. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, want some beer? See? Want some beer? Not? I said it correctly. I'm just throwing that out there. I said it correctly. This is what happens, guys. Just FYI. This is what happens when Scott misses a show.
That's it.
When Scott misses a show and we have to bring Steve on, we have to call him up from the minor leagues and say, hey, man, let's go. This is what happens.
And he has to correct Josh's grammar on Facebook posts.
I want to know what Rick Partlow is asking about my beard. Like he hasn't seen me every day on Facebook.
True.
For the what? Ricky Partlow.
What's with that beard?
What's with that beard, Steve? What is with it? I keep things in there for later.
You got something in your beard. I'm saving it for seconds.
You got
my glasses.
A concealed carry holster in your beard? Is that what?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Andy Peloquin's new show, Deranged and Questing, the Necromancer's Idiot Apprentice. It's a live stream Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch. I'm going to put the link in the copy link. Link is in the live chat. It'll also be in the show notes as well. Check them out. It's a pretty cool show. They're going tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Join Dwarven Barbarian Grok Skullcrusher challenging Arcane Trickster Jin and Human Cleric Sirdaran as they escort Abelard and the utterly inept and frequently ghost-possessed Necromancer's apprentice on a quest to save the realm. Insane hijinks, hilarious role-playing, kick-ass accents, and wacky players that will have you laughing your asses off. Deranged and Questing the Necromancer's Apprentice live on Twitch. And the Fantasy Fiends show YouTube channel.
I was on Fantasy Fiends, I think 2 weeks ago, and they did a live reading of Web of Office. And Andy's the character he did for me was Brent Strongiron, but it was his dwarf voice. Andy's dwarf voice was so incredible. I don't know why that dude's not narrating books. I mean, it was.
Yeah. I think I was on the week after you, and we did a live reading from Brace Cordova, and I think it was Andy. He did the voice for. I think it was Andy did the voice for Vors, my big leonine swashbuckly guy, and it was kind of the same experience. I was kind of like, wow, that's not fucking bad.
And Andy's a great writer too, so I would assume that their D&D podcast is great.
What is he doing now? Are they just going to live stream a D&D game?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what.
Okay, I didn't know if they were like acting out what happened or something.
No, they kind of do like what Critical Role does. With characters.
I miss gaming. Anyway,
we're going to talk about antagonists on the show today. And speaking of antagonists, my 3-year-old is running around here causing a ruckus. So if I dash off screen real quick, it's to save the world. Yeah, that's the explanation there. If you're listening,
mosey on out.
If I mosey on
out.
OK Corral.
Just because you say Texas-y, Western-y type stuff doesn't mean you have the accent down. You can't
I don't.
say
I don't at all.
OK Corral.
Yeah. And there's actually a couple of different accents in Texas.
Look,
I mean, there's definitely a South Texas and a North Texas
Wichita,
accent.
Topeka, that was in the Old West. Like, they can talk like without
No,
accents.
nobody cares about the Midwest, man.
See, this is where we're gonna have a fight. Okay, so welcome everybody in the live chat. If you're listening on the audio stream, come and check us out on YouTube live every Monday. On Thursdays, Kayleen and Lauren do the Writer's Journey. They're coming back September 3rd. So what's that? Next week. So you want to check them out live. And then on Tuesdays, Walt Billard does Coffee and Concepts, and you do not want to miss his show, especially if you like coffee, because he does a really good breakdown. That dude knows more about coffee than anybody I've ever talked to. And he's like, oh, it's got this blah, blah, blah taste, and it smells like this. Okay, I'll get you juice in just 1 second. I'm doing this right now. And yeah. So check all the shows out on the YouTube channel and on our podcast. And we've got some cool stuff coming up for the podcast that's not ready to be released yet. But hopefully that'll be in a couple weeks. We'll have a brand new show to bring you guys. It's not a live show, but it'll be a reader-centric show. Where we kind of focus on the writing aspect of books. This show is going to focus more from a reader's standpoint. So look for that in the future. And let's talk about what we've been up to this week. Steve, I've got to go get juice. You go first.
Yeah, why would you want to hear what I'm doing? Go ahead. No, go. You go. You do things.
Go do you, Josh.
So my kids started school this week, which has been a glorious departure from the quarantine life of 2020. So, of course, my kids, just like everybody else's kids, my kids went on spring break and then never went off of spring break.
Yep.
So, during this whole time, we moved into a new house. So we're in a new school district. We're in just everything is totally brand new and different. But this past week, so like last week, my kids had, my 3-year-old had her like 3 days a week preschool. And my son started school back on Wednesday in first grade, but he had half days. So it's like he was done at 11:55, which when you drop your kid off at like 8 o'clock and come home and, shower and work for like 10 minutes and then have to go pick him back up, it's barely like you even had a.
Dude, I remember those days.
Yeah. So now this week, they're actually both in school, like all day, every day, of course, until there's some coronavirus outbreak and they send everybody home.
Right. Right.
For right now, this is my first moment of kid-free anything in like 7 months. So.
And you're sober. I'm so proud of you.
It's just coffee. So that's been my week. We had Athon's been doing some fun stuff. We've been gearing up for Lou Diamond Phillips' release in October. My own Luna Missile Crisis is finally going to be released on ebook and print. September 22nd, I think, is the date. And Rhett and I just started writing the sequel. And you literally, if you are watching this right now, you are the very first people to hear confirmation that there is a sequel.
You heard it here first.
Telling you, man, we've gotten more emails, contacts about a sequel to Lunar Missile Crisis than anything that I've experienced in 3 years. And I've just been having to tell people, we'll see. So we are writing a sequel, and it has begun.
This is like, we like to do the exclusives. And if you do exclusives on Keystroke, then it's like makes your whole career.
Well, what's great about it is that I know no one will hear it. So. I'm kidding. We have a great reader. We have a great listener base.
And that's about the time that. All right, let's keep talking, Chuck. About.
So what you been up to, Josh?
No, you got a really cool thing on Instagram. I want to hear that today.
I did get actually, I wasn't going to mention that, but I will read the thing I got on Instagram to everyone. I got this morning right before the show, and it was on just a random picture I posted of my dog. And Jamie Broads on Instagram says, This isn't the platform for this, but I must tell you, Awakened is amazing. I have some 800 Audible books in my Audible library, and this is one of the finest books I have ever listened to. Thank you for what you do. And that's a good way to start the day. That's a good way to start the day. And I, of course, responded and, said thanks and all that stuff. But yeah, that was a good way to start the day. And prior to the show, I was working on the second Jack Dark book, just plugging away at that every chance I get. My kids are still at home. They're actually about 10 feet away from me in the dining room doing their schoolwork right now. But the original plan was they were going to be doing distance learning for the first 9 weeks of the semester, and they were going to assess the whole situation statewide and decide about the second 9 weeks. But they've actually decided that they're going to start back to school next week, but they're going to go like every other day. So there'll be a day in class and a day of distance learning and a day in class and a day of distance
Just to give the coronavirus a break.
I guess.
You guys,
every other day.
So I know we don't normally talk about this, but did you guys see the new CDC report that came out that said 94% of all coronavirus deaths have underlying conditions?
Yeah, it's always been people who are immunocompromised.
So
or something.
it's got a, what is it, like a 0.03% fatality rate, but of that 0.03%, 94% of those had underlying conditions. So only like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent just straight died from COVID.
The total number was 9,000 something actual coronavirus deaths. The other ones were complications due to coronavirus or something.
Right.
But then on top of that, there's people like my 91-year-old grandmother who died in her sleep, and they put coronavirus on her death certificate.
Right.
So there's all these different levels, and she was never tested for coronavirus or anything like that.
But on the other side of that coin, there's the 43-year-old mother of one of my daughter's softball friends who had no underlying conditions, caught it, and was dead a week later.
Right. So there are
right here in town.
Right.
That is the problem with this virus, is its complete unpredictability. It's brand new. And so it's not so much about who's dying and what the percentages are and all that shit. It's the fact that you don't fucking know.
Well, I think really all guys I mean, I've talked to Josh about this. All we really want is just some transparency in the way.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I believe people are dying, and I believe that it's a horrible, horrible thing. I just wish there was a little bit of honesty because.
Well, I honestly think that the reason there's not is because they don't know. They're figuring this out as they go.
Tell me that. But if
I understand that.
If we just keep crying wolf, I'm never going to believe the media ever again. If all we do is cry wolf all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I will talk about what I had going on this week, which I hit kind of a.
Wait. Chuck, I want to plug something for Chuck real quick.
Oh, go.
We talked about Awakened on Audible, but right now you can listen to Chuck's Awakened collection on Audible completely free. Right now.
Now there is a caveat to that. I have an agreement with the narrator to do the next 2 books in it, but he is so backed up and so busy that those are still in the future. Now, Awakened is out, but the next 2, if you want to read them, they're available, but they're not available on audio just yet. And he just moved to Vegas or something, so he's backed up. But yes, you can go. I don't know if I'll get paid for it, but I don't give a shit. Go listen to it and enjoy it. That's what I care about.
It's in the
thank you for that. I totally spaced on that, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Josh.
No. It's fine. Here, I'm gonna. This is the link for his book on audio. It's a messy link. It's not an affiliate link. We don't get paid for it. Click on it. Go read Chuck's book.
Listen to the book that somebody somewhere called Experiences of Your Life.
Yeah. Okay, so what have I been up to? I have really it was a kind of a transitioning week for me where I realized last week was when school started, but it wasn't like a full-time thing. My daughter started one day and then was home another day and then went 2 more days, and I realized that I'm gonna have all this time to work and that I need to really focus on working and getting shit done and plugging away and doing what I need to do. And So I made some adjustments, and I made some promises to myself and to a couple other people to really smash it as hard as I can, starting today and then going forward. I did a really I don't know if it was a bad thing or not, but I pitched a book of mine. I pitched an idea to one of the major publishers, and we'll see if I get a positive or negative response back from that. Either way, I'm still going to write the story, but I made the pitch, and I made it as best as I could. And I sent along a short story that I wrote a couple of years ago that really kind of gives the tone of what I was trying to go for. Whether or not that was a good idea, I don't know, but
hey man, you know what?
And
I think you should enjoy try and get the experience of Trad Pub.
Yeah,
just once, just to have it. I mean, because I think just as a professional, growth experience, you should know why you're indie,
right?
And until you try it that way, I'm sorry, what'd you say, Steve?
I said, plus, Athon will pick up your sloppy seconds.
That's right.
That is true. They didn't want it here. Let me.
Oh, here you go. Yeah. If you guys don't mind, just go ahead and do something with this.
Steve will bail me out.
No, but it was not really it was a kind of a nervous thing. Like I had my finger on the send button for a couple of minutes before I sent it, and I'm still kind of nervous about it, but at the same time, rejection is rejection is rejection. It happens, and so if they don't do it, then that's okay. It's one notch in my belt that I needed to do and I wanted to do, and I did it. So and also Devin and I are about 3,000 words away from the end of Tranquility 1. The first book, the first draft is about to be complete. We had to make some adjustments last week, and Devin picked it up and ran with it, and it's there. It's right there. I am actually this morning I was working on some plot points for book 2, but this week Tranquility will be done, and then I will start the editing process, and hopefully we'll have it to Steve in a few weeks, probably. So. And I don't know. We haven't talked about publishing. We haven't talked about any of that. So I have no idea when it could be hitting the web to be read. But we are going to be looking for beta readers. And so if you're interested in being on our street team for Tranquility, we have a Tranquility group, and you can search Facebook and find it. I'm not going to plug it here. But that's what I've been up to this week. I think I'm working on some new stuff for the show. I'm working on a new intro idea and some cool ideas for maybe some videos that we produce and then put up just on our channel. But I'm really looking now that I've made this decision in my head, 100% on keystroke, 100% on reading and writing rather, and really kind of moving forward for the rest of 2020 and doing a lot of big things. So yeah, that's it. That's it. Let's see who else joined the live chat. Brian Mansur is here. Hello. Hey, howdy, Kayleen. How are you? Ario Ochoa is here. Welcome. Bard of Today has joined the live chat. Oh, excellent. All right, let's talk about Antagonist, guys. What do you think? I put up a post in the Facebook group yesterday evening talking about the antagonists, and two of the ones that I saw that probably my favorite antagonists of all time are Benjamin Linus from Lost. A lot of people might not recognize that name, but Benjamin Linus was one of those really low-key, like, ultra villains that you're like, this is really cool. I like that he's not he's not all powerful. He wasn't angry most of the time. He was very like calm and collected, and a very cool villain. And the other one is Sandan Glokta, that we've talked about before on the show, who I thought in the First Law trilogy was probably the only reason that I read those books was for Sandan Glokta. So those were my two favorites. I think Sandan Glokta is the way that they wrote that, the way that he wrote that character was just, I like the really low-key villains. Like I like not having the whole flaming hair and lightning bolts and all that stuff. I mean, both of them you could sympathize or empathize with. Where Benjamin Linus thought he was doing the right thing for the island, Sanding Locta's doing the right thing for his people, and he just does what he does. I mean, he's a torturer, and that's what he does. But he's very he doesn't really do it for enjoyment, though, and that was one of the cool things that I liked about his character, was that he was like this sadistic person that tortured people to get information, but it wasn't like he was just going around and pulling random people off the street and cutting fingers and arms off and stuff. He did it very methodically, and I thought that was really cool. Hey, Patty. Yes, Patty. Patty Finn put that into the chat. So
I agree with that. That's kind of what inspired my little Sherlockian aside there at the beginning of the show. I always like those subtle kind of behind the scenes villains. And some of my favorites have been from the Sherlock Holmes story. I went through a huge Sherlock Holmes phase back in the day. And like Moriarty and the Blackmailer and these guys, they're the villains, but they kind of sit back and manipulate people into doing the evil shit they need done.
Yeah.
And you have to go through layer after layer of bad to get to them. And to me, that kind of sitting back in the shadows things makes them a lot more interesting and a lot more mysterious. And in their own way, they're kind of the megalomaniacal over the top, but they're just so quiet about it. They want domination, but they don't necessarily need to be loud about it. You know what I mean? And I always found those kinds of villains to be a lot more intriguing than the guy that just, kicks open the door and starts waving a gun around.
So the thing I liked about Glocta, and like you can compare him to like Kingpin in the Daredevil series, where Kingpin is like this big, huge, in your face type villain and violent and all that stuff, where Glocta is violent, but he's not actually violent. Like he's just standing there and like 100% of the time he's in pain and not living a happy life and doing what he needs to do. And sometimes like he figures out that, this isn't correct for what he's trying to do, and goes against his masters too in that aspect. And that's really why I like him, because he was human in his own way.
Right.
And I love characters like Captain Hook, for instance. Captain Hook just is kind of out there, right? Like, and just does things because, I don't know. What do you think, Steve? What's your favorite villain?
The Joker.
Well, no, I mean there are going to be those, right? So I like villains to either be one of two things: overtly insane and just no real rhyme or reason for what they do. The Joker is a great example. It's the reason I did not watch the new Joker, and I'm not going to, because I don't want to empathize or sympathize with the Joker. The reason I like the Joker is because I hate the Joker, and I want that
exactly
and throw him in prison. And
just for frame of reference, you're talking about the Dark Knight Joker, right?
In terms,
or just in general.
In general, I mean, the only Joker that didn't have that element of Joker in it was Joaquin Phoenix's Joker.
Phoenix, yeah.
Okay? And that is a direct result of the current times that we're living in, where nobody can just call a character evil.
Right.
And be done with it. And honestly, that's how writers, I know a lot of readers that just want good versus evil. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is the ultimate struggle of mankind, is the good in our hearts versus the evil, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. Voldemort is an evil bastard with no good reason.
True.
For what he's doing.
And still a good villain, in my opinion.
Still a good villain.
Excellent villain.
So, you've got that. You've got, Ramsey Bolton. I saw somebody mention Ramsey in the post the other day. Ramsey was the guy that tortured Greyjoy. Theron. What was his name? Theon Greyjoy. I thought Ramsey Bolton was a great villain because I just wanted to hate him.
Yeah.
If there's a villain, I want to hate him.
Right.
I want to love to hate him. There's a time and place, I think, for all villains. In the Buried Goddess saga, we had totally evil villains, and then we had just kingpin type characters that manipulated people. And there's nothing wrong with having various kinds of villains, but in the end, man, I think your villain needs to have an evil streak to him.
Oh, absolutely. There has to be that sense of me and what I want in mind first, and I will step on your throat. I will cut your heart out. I will make whoever suffer to get what I want. And there's not that isn't something that should be empathized with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay to understand the reasoning, what he wants, why he wants it. It's not okay to say, well, he just did what he had to do.
Well, I mean, the Joker, they basically, if I didn't see it, but what I understand is they basically made it so that he got bullied so much that he killed people.
Well, I did see it, and I went into it with the attitude of it's just a movie. It's not DC canon, yada yada yada. And
honestly, the Joker
really,
could have been any. It didn't.
It
have
could
to
have been any bad
anybody.
guy, because it was a commentary on society's attitude towards mental health,
right?
Towards mental disabilities, whatever. And I think the Joker thing, I kind of feel like that was actually just kind of slapped on there for
itself,
almost marketing purposes.
It definitely was, because if you would have done that movie without it being the Joker,
if you could have
just done it and said, I don't know, titled it whatever you want, like it doesn't matter. But I don't think it would have had as big of viewing as it did because it was labeled the Joker.
Right.
So I don't know, but you know what? Conversely, we're talking about antagonists and not strictly villains. Have you guys ever seen The Americans on it was on FX, but then it was on Amazon Prime too.
Episodes. Yeah. It's that 80s thing, Cold War, Soviet spies in the U.S. kind of thing.
So while we're sitting here talking about these villains, I thought, and you mentioned the good versus evil type thing, and while I'm sitting here thinking about it, what's interesting is that when you watch The Americans, which is a great show, it had one of the better endings that I've seen on a series where the closure was there. You get like a lot of series you get on
yes,
it ends and you're like, this was dumb. Why did I just spend 4 seasons watching this or whatever? And in The Americans, it was so heartbreaking, but it was heartbreaking in a good way, that you have antagonists.
There's your antagonist.
Oh, there's some time.
Antagonist.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
That's actually the first time he's ever done it without yelling at me. So that's a point on me for parenting. But back to The Americans, though. The Americans didn't have a evil protagonist. It didn't have an evil villain. They have the spies and then the FBI that were kind of hunting them, but they created it and they wrote it in such a way that you could literally vote for both sides at the same time. And by the end of the show, you had a confrontation between the two because I don't want to spoil it. It was just so good that during the entire show you had, if you watched it either way, you had an antagonist and a protagonist, but you could flip-flop those and it would still be the same show and it'd still be great. And I would love to do an antagonist like that where you could have both.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you could just have both, like both sides of the coin are an antagonist and a protagonist to the other side, and it works in the story, and you honestly cheer for both sides equally at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think that technically is true for any story, because you've got a villain who wants something and you've got a hero that's trying to keep him from getting that thing he wants. But I really think that what you're saying there kind of illustrates the difference between an antagonist and a true villain.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, an antagonist is just somebody who's trying to stop you from getting what you want. If you're a bank robber and there's a security guard in your way, that security guard is your antagonist.
Yes, 100%.
And but a villain,
that is the villain.
Huh?
Yes. To the security guard, the bank robber is the villain.
Is the villain, and the more villain, the more cold-hearted and methodical you're trying to be to get what you want, that moves you further along that scale towards villainy. Because I think you can have protagonists who do villainous things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Homelander from
The Punisher. There you go. That sums that up. The whole dark hero thing.
Well, I love so the reason I brought up The Americans is because I love the fact that like the main characters who are the spies, they do a whole bunch of, like you're just saying, like they kill people, they lie to people, they sleep with people to get what they want, they ruin people's lives, they change people. But and that's their job. But at the same time, while they're doing this, you're like, for instance, somebody finds out that they're, spies or whatever, and you're like, holy crap, that's going to ruin their whole thing if they get caught. And then they kill them, and you're like, oh, good, they're not caught. But then I'm like, oh my God, I just rooted for these assassins to kill somebody. What does that say about me? But you get a lot of that, and it's just a great kind of mirror. Now, like, I love, like you're saying, like villain or protagonists or antagonists that are villains. Like I love watching those shows too. And I love the clear distinction between the good guy and the villain. Like I love those things, like, like Lord of the Rings. Like that's the easiest way to compare. Like there's no way to sympathize or empathize with Sauron, right? Like there's absolutely no way to do it.
That's not true. Hold on. Give me a second.
And here comes Steve, turns into a glowing eye, and we're like, ah!
I wish just wanted a place to live.
Yeah,
some place that
trying to get along with his neighbors.
And fire and brimstone. They just wanted the Shire, man.
Look, and he liked jewelry. What do you want? He liked jewelry.
There's a difference between, and back to your Americans analogy, there's a difference between somebody who will do something bad because they have to,
right, and
somebody who will do something bad because they get off on it.
True.
And I think that's really the biggest dividing line between an antagonist and a villain. A villain likes it. You know what I'm saying?
We got a lot of crap in the Buried Goddess Saga series because we had sort of, and I'm just going to use these terms, and please don't take them for anything other than what they are, but like we had this sort of Anglo-Saxon group of people, right, that were the good people. And then we had sort of like the Jamaican / Middle Eastern people in the South that were the bad people. And then there was this group and that group. And in the middle of it, we switched it up a little bit, and we wanted people to see the perspective of the ones that were burning down villages all around. And from the first trilogy point of view, you're like, why are these people just attacking and ransacking villages? And then you got to see that they've been under the iron boots, right, of the Anglo-Saxon people for so many years that they finally went, we need to get out from underneath this. Yeah. And people got really upset in like book 4 because they're like, well, why can't the evil people just be evil people? And it's kind of like what Josh is talking about. In that regard, every war is going to have some justifiable reason for doing what they do. We could even go back to World War II. And as much as we all hate the Nazis, and of course we hate the Nazis,
right,
the soldiers were just doing their jobs.
Right. On both sides. Actually, the best comparison, the best picture that I've seen of this is when Dakota Meyer talks about his experience in Afghanistan when he had to kill a Taliban soldier. And he got ambushed, and I've talked about this before, I think, on the show, but he got ambushed. He's trying to fight. He runs out of ammo, but then he gets surprised by a Taliban fighter, and they end up fighting hand to hand. And he ends up killing this dude by smashing his head with a rock, like several times, just going at it. And while he says, he's telling his story, he says, while I'm hitting him, I can see the life drain out of his face. And he says, I didn't kill that guy because I hated him. And there's still no hatred in my heart for the man that I killed. He had a family. He was doing his job. I was doing my job. He was a son. He was a father, probably. Like, I killed him because he was trying to kill me, and there was no hatred there at all. And like, right. So like a lot of us will say, yeah, the Taliban are evil, right? Or they're evil against us. But to their point of view, they're not. And it's an interesting kind of dichotomy, like you're saying. Like the Nazi soldiers, yes, they were doing what they were ordered to do. And the same thing with the Russians in World War II. They were doing the same thing they were ordered to do, and like they lost hundreds of millions of troops. And I'm sure that the sons, the parents of those troops mourned them and all that stuff. I
don't know if hundreds of millions is accurate.
I think there was a lot of Russian people that died on that front of the war. A lot.
I also think, just for clarification, neither of us are siding with the Nazis or the Taliban. So,
yes,
regardless of my beard,
somebody's gonna clip this and be like, "Look at these guys, they're Nazis."
Yeah.
PYOA, we love America.
Yeah,
America.
If you couldn't tell. Let's see. Let's break down a couple of the other villains that we had brought up in the live chat. Let's see. Oh, Denzel Washington's character in Training Day. Like, I don't know that you could really empathize with him because he was
just bad.
He was dirty, man.
He liked being bad, and see, I put him in the villain category.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
like when he died at the end, like that was satisfying. And
right.
Bro,
dude, Training Day's been around for like 20 years. I ain't got time for spoilers.
Thanos, antagonist or villain?
Thanos was the next one I was going to bring up.
Yeah, because he didn't enjoy killing those planets before he got the gauntlet. He didn't. It wasn't like it's not like he got off on it. You know,
so are we talking about MCU Thanos or comic book Thanos?
MCU.
Okay. MCU Thanos. Yeah, that's the one most everybody knows. Okay. Comic book Thanos was just fucking crazy.
Let's bring Thanos into the real world, right? Like, we're talking right now about the conspiracy theories of Bill Gates trying to reduce the population, right?
Yeah, right.
Whether it's conspiracy theory or not, we'll just throw that out there, right? Is it evil? Because I don't see a population issue.
Right. Neither do I.
Therefore, on the other end of it, I go, well, who is he to decide? So in real world, Thanos, I'd go, well, who the F are you to decide this? Show me the vision that you saw, or, whatever it is.
Right.
That's like the self-righteous indignation that I have to go, he was a villain. He was killing people because he thought it was the right thing to do.
So it's interesting because he is the villain, right? He's definitely a villain. I don't know that even if there was a population issue, let's just say he was right. Do we just go and kill half the people, or do we work with it from there and see what we can do to fix it retroactively?
Another planet.
Yeah. Instead of just killing everybody, there's a lot of space. Let's figure it out. But even that said, the way they presented him in Infinity War, where they basically made him the hero, like they wrote his story as a hero's journey, and the Avengers were the enemy. Like, that was a really interesting way to structurally show his story.
Sure.
And of course, everybody is he's bad and he snapped everybody out of it, blah 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 blah. But just the structure of that presentation was cool in the way that they instead of just I don't know, making him Sauron, they gave him some type of empathetical backstory that you could tell, like when he's talking to first of all, if you haven't seen MCU, go watch it for the love.
Honestly, has anybody not seen those movies at this point?
But when he's talking to like little kid Gamora, and he's not excited about doing what he's doing. You can tell in the way that he's talking that he almost regrets it to a point where he's like, we're going to have
that's why I put him in the antagonist category, because I don't think he enjoyed it at all.
But can you have good motives with wrong information and still be some kind of hero?
That's a very gray area. I mean, because it's like if you're doing the wrong thing for what you think is a right reason, like a soldier, he gets an order to go do this thing, and he thinks he's doing this thing because this person is gonna set off a bomb in a mall or something. But then he comes to find out that the guy giving him the order just wanted that guy dead because he cheated at cards or whatever.
Right.
It's like we do so much based on the information available to us, but we never stop to think about what we don't know.
Right.
And it's hard to say you're a hero. A lot of times I think whether or not someone is considered a hero is just whether or not they're supporting the status quo. Someone who challenges the status quo and stands outside the norms that are accepted is easy to point at and say, oh, he's the bad guy, because he's not he's not doing what the rest of us are doing. He wants us to change something. He wants to force us to whatever, and again, it goes back to maybe he's got a good reason for that. Maybe he doesn't, maybe he just likes blowing up shit. So it's this, really, what is a hero?
Right.
It's not just what is a villain. What is the hero?
During the Revolutionary War, we would have had people who were colonists, right, fighting against those who were, quote, patriots of the British Empire.
Yep.
And to those who supported the British Empire, those who we now call heroes were doing terrorist acts.
Yeah, they were terrorists to the British of the time.
Yeah. I want to
Grateful for those people, by the way.
I want to talk a little bit about more of the examples that were brought up in the live chat, because I think there was a lot. But first, I want to read this. Hold on. Let me find the thing. Let me find it. Easy. We have 2 sponsors today. Muted Implications by J. Clifton Slater is this 12th book in his Clay Warrior Stories series. When this is over, you and I are going to have a short talk over a long pair of blades. By law, all debts must be paid by the Ides of March. The senior tribune did not care for Centurio Alero's Cicero, and the feeling was mutual. For men like them, sharp steel was the only acceptable currency. Unless something changed, one would emerge a winner and the other the guest of honor at a funeral. Blood payment might not have been the official objective, but it would not matter to an enraged Illyrio Cicero, as he clutched a gladius and held a temple voucher aloft. Every debt must be paid by the Ides of March, especially those of men scheming behind muted implications of doom.
Mm.
That is Muted Implications by J. Clifton Slater. I will put a link to that book in the live chat. And if you haven't picked it up, because it was also the sponsor last week, if you haven't picked it up, go and do it right now. And then come back and finish watching the show. So yeah, that was it. Let's see. Let's pick a couple of these other ones in the live chat and talk about them. So we got cigarette smoking man from the X-Files. Anybody want to?
Love that guy.
I did not. So I know who he is, and I know what his deal is. Basically, in the story context of the X-Files, he was like the kind of like the hands of the conspiracy, right? Like
he was like the ultimate man in black. He was the guy that you never really saw, but he was like it's just what I was talking about earlier, man. He was pulling strings everywhere. He's supposedly in the X-Files universe, he's the one that set up the guy that shot Kennedy and all this stuff.
George Bush.
Huh? But he was like that exactly what I was talking about. He was like that power behind the power,
Right.
But he didn't want anybody to know it. He enjoyed having the power, but he knew that his exposure would take that power away from him. So he was always in the shadows, always in the background. And he was one of my favorite characters in that series.
And what do you think? So do you think antagonist or villain for him?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I cut you off.
I'm gonna go with antagonist because he felt like he was doing the right thing, and he did. And to him, it was just duty. He didn't enjoy murdering people, but he would do it at the drop of a hat if he thought it was called for.
Right.
And not feel one way or the other about it.
Makes sense. What were you going to say, Steve?
I was just going to say I've never seen a single episode of the X-Files.
I've seen a couple. Like I've never seen them
not be friends anymore
in sequence. I've watched the movie. I really liked the first movie, not the second movie, but the first movie I really enjoyed. But I don't know. It's one of those things.
I'll tell you this. It is. I was a huge fan of it in the 90s, and I watched every episode, and I saw the renewal of it recently and all that stuff. I will say it's not the cleanest storytelling.
Yeah.
The setting is amazing. It's just because of all the conspiracies and all this stuff. The setting is fantastic. And I think that's what really drew me to it was the setting and the characters. As far as the cohesiveness of the story, in a way, it was a lot like Lost, where they would raise questions and not give really solid answers to
Right.
them. But I enjoyed the characters and the setting enough that I overlooked that stuff. And there are individual episodes that are just freaking amazing, particularly one called Home. If you don't watch anything else of the X-Files, go find the episode entitled Home, because it was one of the best things I've ever seen on TV. So damn creepy.
I would like to.
Thinking about it.
I had never been a real big fan of, other than Doctor Who, I've never been a huge fan of the Freak of the Week type shows.
Yeah.
Right.
Smallville maybe is an exception, of course, until about episode or season 7. I enjoyed it. But that was kind of what pushed me away from the X-Files. But I would love to watch like one.
The later seasons get away from that. The first couple of seasons are that it's a new case every episode and there's always a monster or something.
Right.
But later on, it about the grander conspiracy and stuff.
Okay.
I'm kind of like Steve on that, where I like, that's why I couldn't ever get into it, because I'm kind of spoiled now, where like every series now, most every series now has that kind of overarching story to it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm looking for when I get into the series. And I don't like it's like if I were to watch Star Trek The Next Generation now, I probably couldn't watch it. Not because I didn't like Star Trek, but because every episode's something new.
Right. It's very serialized.
Yeah. And that's like Deep Space Nine. They like for the first 4 seasons it was like that, but then after season 4 it became this big huge continuous.
Yeah, when the Dominion came in and the war started and all that.
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica, the 2004
fantastic show
version of it. That is
watched it.
Changed my mind about sci-fi in general.
Right.
I did not like sci-fi at all. And then I watched BSG and I'm like, oh my God, this is absolutely freaking amazing.
Have you ever seen, so I love the new BSG, even though I wasn't particularly fond of the way that it ended. The when it went like really far religious, in the prophecy and all that kind of stuff, I started losing it a little bit, but then the ending happened and it was okay. If you like, I don't know if you've ever watched Babylon 5.
Oh, I loved Babylon 5.
But if you like that kind of story, Babylon 5 was actually the first sci-fi series that was written as a big story.
Yeah.
It was not written as a
wrote all 5 seasons.
Yeah. And actually you can actually watch it without, you can kind of skip some of season 1 and then you can skip season 5 and watch all the way through season 4. And that series, look, you're going to watch it and you're going to see them hit the wall and the wall's going to move because the production quality was not great.
Right.
Even the CGI is okay.
Oh
but
my God. It's
for the time it was phenomenal.
25 years old or something, I think at this point.
But the storyline is so good and it involves time travel and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it just seals itself into this big bubble that is a great story. Babylon 5 is probably my favorite series story of all time. Just because of the way that it seeds together.
The two things, Battlestar was an intentional mirroring of Mormonism.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why it got all weird and religious at one point.
I never saw it.
You need to. It's absolutely brilliant.
Babylon, BSG is great.
Somebody in the comments there, Unity Booktube, said they're trying to remake BSG just for sake of it. They're actually not remaking it. What they're doing on the Peacock network is telling a story that runs parallel with the 2004 seasons. So it is literally taking place at the same time that we got to see Admiral Adama and all of that. Yeah. And they're telling a completely different story. It's the same overarching world and everything that was going on, but we get it from different characters' perspectives.
It's kind of like BSG Razor, but on a bigger scale. Yeah,
and I'm super excited about it because, I mean, that's the only reason I'm at all interested in Peacock other than the Psych movie.
I saw they were bringing it back. Is it a movie?
Have you seen the second one yet?
I haven't watched the Psych movie yet on Peacock, no.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I think they were trying to work around O'Munson's stroke, you know?
Yeah.
So you can see a couple of things, but it's still very watchable.
And then there's actually a David Schwimmer show on there that they let you watch the first episode for free, and it was good. I was impressed with his abilities there.
We've talked about Babylon BSG a minute and Babylon 5. The cool thing about the enemy in Babylon 5, the antagonist in Babylon 5, which is the shadows, and then you learn a little bit more about why they're doing what they're doing as the series goes along. It actually really kind of makes sense in a kind of an odd way as you start to realize what's going on behind the scenes of the show. And the shadows are still kind of like that overarching, like that Sauron enemy character. But then you also kind of get a little bit of, okay, I can see why they're doing that. So it's kind of a cool, you don't ever agree with what they're doing, but then you can kind of see, okay, that makes sense in the framework of the story.
So you don't agree with what they're doing, but you kind of get why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Let's look at another one. Let's see. I don't know who Alex Krysek is.
It's Alex Krysek.
That's who that is.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this one because I'm kind of conflicted about this one. Raul Silva from Skyfall. They built this guy up to be like this ultimate villain. I remember seeing in the trailers where they built him up to be like this pinnacle villain. And then in the movie, they still build him up to be this like pinnacle villain. But it kind of like, to me, it kind of him as a villain worked, but not as this big thing that they were making him.
Yeah, he was you almost feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
Because he rode to villainy, his face was all jacked up and
What'd you say, Steve?
Are we talking about Skyfall, James Bond?
Yes.
Yeah, James Bond.
Yeah, because they said that, I can't believe that it's this guy. And apparently he was I think his backstory was that he was an agent, but then he turned his back on him and he got hurt and then he had a facial prosthetic and all this other stuff. But they made him out to be like, if we watched all the James Bond movies, this is the guy that's working everything. Like that, they made him out to be like this big thing, and he really wasn't.
Yeah, well, and I think that's another example of what Steve was saying about us trying to empathize with villains too much.
Yeah.
To the detriment, because he was basically supposed to be the guy that's stroking the white cat for Connery's Bond,
right? Exactly.
Just completely irredeemable, just interested in power for power's sake, and yada yada yada. And I think they tried to humanize him so much that it actually killed his villainous credo,
right?
So
you don't want to be conflicted over whether or not.
I agree with that.
I don't want that confliction.
Well, and I think too that like if it's kind of like other movies where they do things but they don't build it up. It's like the 8th season of Game of Thrones when Daenerys goes off and goes out crazy. Like if they would have built that up correctly, would have been a cool twist, or it would have been okay, this happens. But
hold on. At what point during the first 7 seasons did you not see her insanity building up to that?
So
only seen 2 seasons. Just saying.
Only what? Oh, she destroyed an entire city, crucifying people.
Well, but she was crucifying slavers, not just random people.
So, I mean, Cersei was that. She was literally just doing exactly the same thing.
Well, so all I'm saying is like they made her twist at the end, like in the span of like 15 minutes. And it just didn't work for me. I don't know. There wasn't enough buildup for that because she was continually battling against the Targaryen Mad King thing.
She was continually trying to become that. And I think that all we saw was a hot blonde that we were interested in rooting for and forgot that she was effing insane.
I don't know. We can disagree on that, but that was my thing with Raul Silva in Skyfalls. They built him up, but then he wasn't this big thing. Now, conversely, on the same comment by Adam Rice, by the way, thank you for commenting. Dolores Umbridge from Order of the Phoenix. Like,
oh yeah,
I think she was the
Miss Manners chick.
We lost Steve. See that? See, this is what happens, Steve. You disagree with me and you become a meme. Somebody meme this. Somebody meme Steve. That's what happens.
So wasn't she the one who was like Miss Manners? You know, she was like the very prim, proper teacher chick,
wearing pink and all that stuff.
Yeah, she was horrible.
Yeah,
oh,
and in the book, she's actually way worse than she was in the movie. In the book, she's horrible. I mean, she's horrible in the movie, but in the book, she was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that like
I put her firmly in the villain category.
Oh, 100% in the villain category.
Because she was a joy in that shit.
Well, not only that, but there was, you know, you could maybe say that she was working for the man and trying to do that, but you could just tell like every little thing that she could do to gain a little bit more power and control of what was happening, she was definitely doing. Oh, and see here, we have William Tyler Davis here. I agree with Steve. It was always coming to that, but they did John wrong. Jamie's ending could have been better. They spent that's true. That I will agree 100% with Jamie's ending. I think he should have ended up with Brienne. And John, she's not she's the queen or whatever. Yeah, ruined that. But anyway, Dolores Umbridge, I think as an antagonist, definitely a villain. But she kind of falls into that unassuming villain character where she's not like in the forefront and burning the school to the ground. She's doing it more through a slow, methodical welcome back.
She was just sadistic.
Yeah, she really
was her thing. She was just sadistic, you know, and she came from that school of villainy that's all about hyper controlling everything, and she's enforcing the behaviors that pleases her through this sadism and that kind of thing.
Right,
and that's a different kind of that's a, like you were saying, it's kind of a psychopath in a teacher's in grandma's clothes kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, because you look at her and you're like, oh yeah, she probably bakes cookies on Sunday when she's really out, you know, giving lashes to the children on Sunday.
I love her little like.
Yeah, you know, it's so prim and proper and British, and she's just fucking everybody up.
Dolores
so
Umbridge talking about?
Yeah, Dolores. Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody at the NSA did not appreciate my Game of Thrones thoughts.
No, that was Josh.
That's what I said. That's what happens when you argue with your show, man. You become a meme.
Dolores was absolutely a brilliant villain.
Brilliantly done. Yeah.
Hey, I got one. Can I share? Can I ask about your opinions on this one?
Yeah, man, go.
One that was entirely inconclusive, even with the following movies: The Hands of Blue.
The what?
Firefly.
Oh, from Firefly. Ooh, good one. Ooh, that's a deep cut, man.
Who?
Josh is like, who is that? Because you forgot that was the villain they set up for an entire
with the blue glove.
I don't know. Honestly, I've seen the series twice. I've got the DVDs up there, but for some reason I'm drawing a blank on who.
River basically of the Hands of Blue, which were just men with blue gloves on,
but
and then they never concluded it.
They were like the secret police for the what they call it, not the Empire, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Alliance. They were like the secret police for the Alliance. I don't know, and I think that's hard to say because we didn't get to see more of them. You know, were they psychopaths who enjoyed the work they were doing, or were they just loyal soldiers?
So when you say that, I think of the assassin in the Firefly movie, Serenity.
No.
Was he?
No, as a matter of fact, that was what I hated about it. See, they took a perfectly okay villain and went, and then they went, here's a brand new villain for you.
Yeah.
Right. He should have been a blue glove guy.
I'll have to watch the series again.
But I don't know.
I love that series, by the way. I think that's a great series.
I like that it ended because I think that if it continued, people would have realized how bad it actually was. I say that with love, but it was great.
Right.
There was so much wrong with it.
Right.
What exactly did you think was wrong with it?
I mean, the world building honestly made no sense whatsoever. Yeah. He's getting ready to fight. He's ready to fight. Again, remember that.
Hold on a second.
But there was no way, and even some of the actors said the same thing. There was no way to continue that in any realistic way without the fans going, "Oh, this is as stupid as I thought it was." It just
right.
What I don't know. Watch it again and look at all the unconcluded things.
So it's interesting because the way have you watched it in the way that they meant it to be seen, or have you watched it in the way it was released? Because they released it backwards. Both. Well, Steve, because they released it, the series they released back like the
they released like the third episode first, and then something all convoluted and screwed
I have
up.
watched it on whatever format. I believe it was Netflix had it on most recently.
That would have been in order then.
That would have been in order, yeah.
I didn't like it the first time I watched it. I watched it and I thought, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And then all of our friends were like, Firefly. So I'm like, okay, so Robin and I watched it and we loved it. We loved it.
So what was the issue with the world building?
Okay, so there's no good explanation for all the Chinese American stuff.
It's all blurred together.
There's no good reason why any of the technology should exist, yet there's this Western backworld situation that they have going on. Yeah. I get there's cool world building, but it makes no sense. It couldn't function that way.
Now okay, so here's my problem is that I have like read the novels and I've listened to the audiobooks and the stuff that expand the Firefly expanded universe.
Right.
So I have explanations for some of that stuff, but from strictly the show standpoint, I see what you're saying.
And keeping in mind that like the ones that James Foster narrated didn't come for what? Like they just came out last year.
Right.
Yeah. So I told you had no information for the last decade.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It was interesting in that it was different, in that it was like no one had ever done that before. And that's why I think I kind of looked over it from a writer's standpoint, looked over it at the beginning when I first started watching it, because the combination of the swearing in Chinese and then all the cool stuff like that was different, and I was like, okay, I'll run with it. But you're right, from a world building standpoint, like story wise, didn't make any sense at all. Just as it was presented. It
reminds me of some of my first fantasy novels where I went, that would be cool, let's put that in there.
Oh, but not thinking about why it's that way.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. No, I agree. They did not explain some of those things within the first few episodes,
and I don't think they would have, even if they got more seasons. I think
that's not Whedon's. That's not one of Joss Whedon's stronger things. He just sort of throws it out there and says, "Accept this."
But man, we love the entertainment value. I mean,
absolutely,
for sure,
absolutely.
Let's touch on one last one, and then we'll start to wrap it up. I know we're a little over, but that's okay. I'm having a good time. Rick Partlow in the Facebook group says Hans Gruber as a villain.
Oh, villain.
Let's talk about Hans Gruber. I loved Hans Gruber because he was just really charismatic type, but not like over the top. He was just like, I really liked his villain. Like,
yeah. It's always neat when you see a villain who's like doing something terrible, but he's so very polite about it.
Right.
Very calm. Because like when he's like, he has his guys come in, they've got all the people in the room in Nakatomi Plaza, and they're shooting their guns to get everybody's attention, and he just kind of raises his hand.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hello, I'm da 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 da."
Yeah. I think we have to speak to Alan Rickman's, the great Alan Rickman.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, he took characters that maybe weren't the greatest things in the world. Hans Gruber, like he made Hans Gruber who he was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brilliant.
He was a master of that. Even
what's great is the
robot in Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yep.
I mean, that was a brilliant performance.
Yep. What's great is that the character of Hans Gruber is completely irredeemable. Like, right? He's just a thief. Like Rick's saying in the live chat, he's a thief. All he wants is money. There's not really any underlying like I'm doing this to save my daughter's cancer research or something like that. Like it's just like I'm stealing money because I want a shit ton of money. But you still like him as it like he's still enjoyable to watch as
he's charismatic.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I like the being able to, and you don't even really root for him, right? You're rooting for John McClane in that movie,
of course.
But at the same time, you're like, I like him as a villain. Like he's a pretty good villain.
I kind of wish he'd just go to jail instead of getting killed, so that he can come back for another movie.
Because the second movie was horrible. Don't ever watch Die Hard with a Vengeance 2, or Die Hard 2. Watch Die Hard and then Die Hard with a Vengeance, and then the one right after that, which is Live Free or Die Hard. But then don't watch the one in Russia. Don't watch the one after that. There's 3 Die Hards to watch. The first
I agree with that.
Die Hard with a Vengeance, and then Live Free or Die Hard. Those are the only 3 Die Hards you need to watch.
Somebody also mentioned Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Great villain.
He plays the best villains. He's amazing.
I'm going to cut his heart out with a spoon because it'll hurt more, you twit. Like great lines, great delivery. And he is also another one of those villains that doesn't have really any redeeming qualities, but you like it when he's on screen. Like you're like, oh yeah, this is a good villain right here.
Yeah. Completely irredeemable, but doesn't care.
Yeah. That was look. I could talk about villains all day long. Like Darth Vader was a great villain. Even though he was presented as one of those like really really mean villains in the fourth episode. But then as you kind of move along through the story, you kind of learn a little bit more, and then he redeems himself. Blah blah blah. Spoilers if you haven't seen Star Wars. Get out of here.
I always wondered though, if you've never seen Star Wars.
Right.
And so you never saw episode 4 first and saw Darth Vader as Darth Vader. And, say what you want about the prequels. They do fill in his backstory and tell you why he became Vader.
True.
Would you hate him as much in episode 4 as you did if you just saw episode 4?
If you watched it in order? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think you would.
Of course, my views on Star Wars have never been silent. I don't think that they're very good. I love the EU, but I don't think the movies were what everyone thinks they are. Personally, that's my personal view.
I think you're breaking up a little bit, Steve. Are you driving through a tunnel? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You're not really breaking up.
My bad. I love them for nostalgia's sake, but here's my question. Could Anakin Skywalker ever legitimately be the Vader that we learned of in A New Hope and onward?
Right.
I don't buy that Anakin is him. It doesn't flow.
Right. You're supposed to believe that just because Padme died, he went through this complete psychotic break and became. And I never bought it either. And I had so many problems with the way they handled that prequel. He should have been much eviler much early on.
Eviler.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been so like, oh, I'm just trying to do the right thing, because that guy, no matter how bad Obi-Wan dismantled him, he never would have become the guy that worked for the Emperor.
It was another example of like, let's have this super evil villain and then go, why is he that way? And then they tried to make him a real person, which this dude over here is not a real person.
Right? Yeah. They could have handled that a lot better. And honestly,
Luke
that's a whole other episode tearing apart.
You mentioned Luke being able to beat him. It's the same thing with Rey being able to beat the Emperor, and like both of those things would have. If we're talking about a reality of Star Wars, and you're looking at the power of the Force, Rey would not have been able to beat the Emperor. Luke would not have been able to beat Darth Vader. Like it was like legitimately as it was presented, that wouldn't have happened. And you're right. Like whatever.
Space Wizards, man.
Yeah, Space Wizards are cool. Ari Ochoa mentioned, what about Snape, when we already talked about Alan Rickman. But Snape, I think, is one of those characters that is presented until you get to book 6, is presented as one of those irredeemable bad characters. And then when you get to 6 and you kind of learn everything about his backstory, you're absolutely right. Like Snape is one of those bad characters that you root for at the end, who is obviously doing the right things in the way that he perceives them as right. And maybe they weren't fair and maybe they weren't just, but it was right in the way that he was trying to do what he was trying to do. And you do ultimately side with Snape. I think one of the coolest things about Harry Potter as a story is I got my wife to watch them, the series. She never read the books, but the series. And every time we watch the 6th movie, like we choke up. And then at the end of part 2, where he makes that sacrifice and he says always and all that, like in my feels, like I'm right there. I love Snape as a character. Like Snape as a character is probably one of the best realized antagonist characters that I've ever read. And I mean, say what you want about J.K. Rowling and her writing, but her characters are really good. Like
I don't want to hear anybody say anything about J.K. Rowling and her writing, because it was fan-freaking-tastic.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think Snape he very firmly falls into what I consider a gray hero kind of category.
Yeah.
Because
he is doing the right thing.
His intentions are good.
Right.
He's just going to do whatever the hell he has to do to arrive at that good. You know?
I think as adults, we look back on J.K. Rowling and we forget that they were written for kids. We look back at Star Wars and we forget that it was written for kids.
Right.
And we try to judge it as adults, and it's not fair to do. It's not.
I got
to see Star Wars as a kid, so I kind of both perspectives.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I definitely am much more critical as an adult because, you know, adult motivations are different than kid motivations.
Well, yeah, and children's books are written way differently than adult books are written. Like I go back and so I listen to the audiobooks with my kids in the car. We're listening to book 5 right now, and the writing is obviously written for a middle grade audience. And at first it annoyed me at first, but now I'm just like, I'm listening to the story and I'm enjoying it, and it is what it is.
But one of the beautiful things about the Harry Potter series is how the books mature with the audience. She was brilliant in that respect.
100%.
Philosopher's Stone, or whatever they call it in America, the first book, very much a kid's book, but then by the end of it, she's writing for older teenagers.
Yep.
You know, and that was just so well done.
Yep. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. Everybody in the live chat, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. It was a blast. If you're listening on the audio feed, be sure you check us out live on Mondays whenever we decide to go live. Thursdays, it's at 8 p.m. Central because that's the only time zone we talk about. And on Tuesdays, it's Coffee and Concepts with Walt Robillard. And whatever time he decides to go live, you can see the notifications. If you subscribe and then hit the notification bell, ding, then you'll know every time we go live. So there's no excuse. Everybody that came and hung out with us, thank you guys so much. Thank you to Steve for coming on and guest co-hosting, special guest co-host.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah, good time. Good times. Everybody else, thank you guys so much for watching, and come back and hang out with us next week. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.